shoes and walk among the groups of two. It's not ideal, it's just how we feel. It's a shame we're easily amused. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away. The air is cold, but the water's not frozen. I see ripples rolling every day. Cast a stone and hit a hardcore view. Catchphrase of the day is that it's true. There's no coffee talk and only one way to please. It's a shame what you do moves me. The only cure for this forward motion is to make emotion fly away.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome to Rebellious Ufology. I am so happy to welcome you to today's show on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, as well as Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Spreaker, and Anchor FM. I'm so excited to see you all here. Today, I will be talking with Kathleen Marden. Now, for those of you that don't know, Kathleen is a researcher, author, on-camera expert, conference presenter, experiencer advocate, hypnosis practitioner, and support group facilitator. She's known as one of the leading UFO contact researchers of our time. Since 1990, she has researched the perplexing nature of UFOs and the non-human entities associated with highly advanced aerial vehicles via her own groundbreaking research, investigation, and experimentation. Her research has extended to archival collections and the U.S. government's involvement in the investigation of UFOs and its major studies. So Kathleen also has a brand new book out called Forbidden Knowledge, A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation. I cannot wait to hear all about it. And for those that don't know, which if you don't know, how do you not know this? Kathleen is the niece of Betty and Barney Hill. So she's grown up with this stuff. Just a reminder before we start, if you do ask a question in the chat, please type it in all caps so that I can see it easier. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy this conversation, please feel free to share the love, share the show so that they too can join us. And if you like what you see here today, consider joining the rebellion by hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget to ring the bell to get all the notifications for the shows. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Rebellious UFO and Instagram at Rebellious Ufology. All right, everyone. Well, enough of me rambling on. Let me bring Kathleen onto the show. Kathleen, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So happy to have you here.
Thank you.
You, like I said, for those that don't know, and I don't know how this is possible, but it is possible that perhaps some people don't know that you're Betty and Barney Hill's niece, and you've kind of grown up in this. Do you want to give us just a brief kind of overview of what sort of got you into doing UFO research?
Sure. I was 13 years old when Betty and Barney had their experience, and my mother was the first person that Betty called when they arrived home that day, and I was just arriving home from school and heard the story from my mother, and that was the first time I heard from my own mother that she had had an encounter with a very large UFO with smaller ones flying around it. So I became fascinated. Within a couple of days, we went to Betty's and Barney's house and looked at all sorts of evidence and heard the story from Betty's mouth while Barney sat in a quiet part of the room speaking with my father. So that was very interesting to me. I was hooked. I wanted to know what happened. I knew pretty early on that they had a period of missing time that they couldn't account for, and that it was an extensive 2 to 3 hour period. And so I watched the unfolding, the impact this had on Betty and Barney, and I met most of the major investigators in that time frame, and well, today as well. And I was so impressed by those people who came to my childhood home, like I met Alan Hynek at Dr. Simon's home, actually, Jacques Vallée at my home, uh, Robert Holman, C.D. Jackson, Walter Webb, you name it, some very important people in the UFO investigation field. And I was very impressed by the work they did.
Yeah.
And I thought, someday I would like to do that kind of work, that I want to know the answers. And so I just pursued this. And, I grew up, I had a regular career, I married, I had children. And then in 1991, I took a deep dive into first what had happened to Betty and Barney. I investigated it, researched it, on and on. For those who don't know, they had a close encounter with a UFO. It hovered only 100 feet above them. And then they had the craft come over the top of their vehicle. The vehicle vibrated. They felt like an electrical tingling sensation in their bodies.
Mhm.
And they then found themselves about 35 miles down the highway with some recall of what had happened in the interim, but no recall of the abduction itself. That was brought forward through separate hypnosis with Dr. Benjamin Simon, famous neuropsychiatrist. And that was to treat Barney, because Barney had developed what was called conversion hysteria, where, because of the impact of his conscious recall of observing those non-humans and thinking that they were going to abduct him, that he, and he had that physical evidence when he arrived home, that he just developed trauma and he developed bleeding ulcers and he was hospitalized. And so Dr. Simon was the perfect person to treat Barney. He knew almost nothing about UFOs. He didn't believe there was any scientific evidence for them. He was wrong. But so I was very impressed. I met Dr. Simon as well. And this was going to be what I did. I transcribed the hypnosis tapes with Dr. Simon, about 10 hours of hypnosis tapes for comparative analysis for my book with Stanton Friedman, Captured the Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience, which I've just recently updated.
That's incredible. And so now you also have had experiences of your own. And I'm kind of assuming, based on the description and the title of the new book, that you're talking more about your own experiences in this latest book.
I did talk about my own experiences. I thought that I would never do this. And then things have changed. Experiencers are coming forward. The people who held high-level positions in the federal government are saying that they've had their own experiences and revealing a great deal of information about these visitors. And so I thought, well, it's time that I came out and told the truth, because for so many years, people would ask me that question and I would deny it. And people who had FBI lie detector training knew that I was lying when I said that, not about anything else, but when I said, no, I haven't had a UFO contact or abduction experience. So my first conscious memory of that was when I was 17 years old. And my Aunt Betty Hill was doing a series of contact, like CE5 experiments is what we call them today. They were calling them psychophysics experiments. And Betty was scripted. They gave her the language that she was supposed to use when she attempted to contact these extraterrestrials. And she would call them into different areas, and the team would go out and they would look for them, and sometimes they saw the craft. Well, one of the things that she was attempting to do was have a craft come in and land on my grandparents' farm. And when she was doing these experiments, craft were being seen in the neighbors' yards, through the neighbors' windows. And the incident at Exeter might be part of what Betty Hill did.
Wow.
Because there were a lot of UFOs seen in southeastern New Hampshire in that time frame.
Oh my
But
God.
anyway, I grew up across the street from my grandparents' farm, and a craft did came in for a landing. It was observed by two people. One of them was a neighbor of ours who was returning home from work. The other was my grandmother. It left physical trace evidence on the ground, but what my mother and I did not acknowledge was that the two of us found ourselves on craft that night. And I have to tell you, I was traumatized. I was very traumatized for many years, holding the secret inside.
Wow.
And finally, I talked to Dr. James Harder, and this was about the early mid 70s, I guess. And he came out to New Hampshire. He was a professor at the University of California, Berkeley. He taught in the civil engineering department, but he also did bioengineering, and he was a hypnotherapist. And he came out, he hypnotized my mother and myself. We had additional experiences as well. So I wrote about all of that in Forbidden Knowledge, and my mother's experiences as well.
Now, did you say your mom had experiences? Had she had experiences her whole life, or did it start with the family sort of after everything happened with Betty and Barney?
Well, I'm not entirely certain. I don't know. I know in hypnosis, I did recall being taken for the first time when I was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I've wrote about that in detail. I've written about that in detail, and I've even done a compilation of some photographs and put in an ET that I drew and a little girl that I saw on the craft, too, and a little boy. And so I don't know. Since I didn't have conscious recall, I never trust memories that are not consciously recalled. So there's a possibility that I was taken when I was less than 5 years old, like the majority. Well, I can't say the majority, 37% less than 5, but less than 20 years old, something like 80%.
Oh, wow.
Or higher. It might be higher than that.
Yeah.
I don't have the statistics in front of me. I'm going on memory. But yes, so there's a possibility that this happened before I was 17. I had another memory of when I was about 13 years old, and I also had my first out-of-body experience when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
And I was 13 when Betty and Barney had their experience. So maybe they were just back visiting the entire family. Maybe Betty was taken earlier than what she recalled, but they made a mistake when they picked Betty and Barney up, because they left lots of evidence and radar evidence as well, and that period of missing time.
Yeah. Well, maybe it wasn't a mistake. Maybe they wanted to give them that little nudge of, hey, why don't you guys remember this a little bit here?
Yeah, I suppose that could be. That
Yeah.
maybe they wanted to give them evidence.
Now, you had said, and I find this amusing. So Betty was basically doing what we now call CE5 and calling ships in, and they were kind of threw off. Were the neighbors used to this after a while? Were they just kind of like, "Oh, Betty's at it again! Like, here come more UFOs."
The neighbors were excited about it.
Yeah.
They were a little frightened. They wouldn't go out into their yards when the UFOs were landed or came in close in their backyards. In fact, I had I think a second or third cousin who lived up on a hill near my house, and she was a widow at that point. And what happened to her was that she looked out her house, the window in her house, and she saw a little like craft out there, sort of like a tiny vehicle, and it was terrified. She went to bed and she wouldn't come out for
Oh, no.
a couple of days.
Oh,
I
no.
wrote about that in Captured.
Oh my gosh, poor thing.
Mm.
Let's see. Anonymous Rex has a question for you. What is the Zeta Reticuli connection made by Betty and Barney? Why does Calcorf, is that how you pronounce that, refute the claim so harshly? Thank you.
Well, when Betty was on the craft, she was shown a picture of a star map. She said to the leader, this was revealed through hypnosis.
Yeah.
She said to the leader, I know you're not from around here. Where's your home port? And he produced sort of a three-dimensional model of a star map. And there were two very large stars in the foreground, connected by 5 lines. And then there were other stars that were smaller, connected by 1 or 2 lines. And then some that were further away that had only dotted lines. And so Dr. Simon said to Betty, under hypnosis, can you draw that star map if it doesn't trouble you too much and if you can remember it accurately? So Betty went home and she sketched it. And then Marjorie Fish, who was a brilliant woman from Ohio, and an amateur astronomer, went to the university. There were no computers in those days to use, and she couldn't check the astronomical catalogs out of the university. So she sat for hours copying all the distance data and all the stars' characteristics on the sun-like stars in our local galactic neighborhood out 54 light years. And then she started to construct models. Imagine the math that she had to do to know where to place every star in its proper position in our local galactic neighborhood. And all she made 14 models.
Wow.
She didn't have a match. She thought that she would have a match.
Yeah.
But she didn't get a match until we made technological progress and we had better distance data on our stars. And then she had this new distance data. She went through and she moved the stars around in that model, and she had a match, a reasonable match for Betty's star map. And Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 were those 2 stars in the foreground. And the truth of all of this is that Stanton and Friedman located astrophysicists who were willing to vet Marjorie's work for accuracy. Dr. Alan Hynek was one of them. He was at that time the director of the Dearborn Observatory and professor. I think he was the department chair at Northwestern University. And of course, before that, he was the astronomical consultant for Project Blue Book, sort of dismissing all of this until he had enough evidence to know that it was real.
Yeah.
And so he was one. There was an astrophysicist who was the head of the physics department at Ohio State University. And he and his students did this via the computer. And they said that Marjorie's work and Betty's map were reasonably accurate as well. And then David Saunders, Dr. David Saunders, who was a statistician, who worked on projects on the Condon Report, did a statistical analysis on all of this and said that the chance that Betty would have identified these stars so accurately was astronomical. And so there were scientists who reviewed the work and believed that it was accurate. And then you have debunkers.
Of course.
And I won't say debunkers with Cal Korff. I'll call him a disinformant because he always says, I'm not a debunker.
All right, here you go. Here's a worse name for you.
So I say he's a disinformant because he's not looking at the evidence. I don't know what he's doing. He's always been one who has attempted to refute the reality of UFOs. The stars on Betty's star map have very important characteristics. All of the stars on Betty's map are sun-like stars, although only 5% of the stars in our local galactic neighborhood are sun-like. And all of the sun-like stars in that volume of space are on Betty's map. Wow. Not only that, they're all in a plane. And in being in a plane, it makes it easier if you're going to travel from one star to another star. In fact, one astronomer who looked at that map said that if we were astronauts on Zeta Reticuli, the route that these ETs showed to Betty is the route that we would take. It made sense, nearest star to nearest star, if we were going to explore our local galactic neighborhood. So those are all refutations to Cal Korff, but he's just a naysayer.
Wow. But that's amazing, especially since Betty's the map that she had produced wasn't even accurate until we got more information. So her map was technically more accurate than the map that we, or the calculations that we knew of at the time, until we were able to get more information. That's incredible. I don't know how anybody can refute that. That to me is and that was verified, as you said, by several astrophysicists. So how can one refute that? That's impressive.
Yeah, it's true. And also one of the criticisms is that Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2 are twin stars, and that they could not have a planet in a stable orbit. Yeah. But the astronomers that Stanton spoke to about this said that that is false. It is, they can have a stable orbit. Yeah. And of course, we have not found stars around Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. It doesn't mean they're not there.
Right.
They're just too far away, and it's a little embarrassing, I think, for our scientists to make any public search on this, spend any time on it, because it's taboo.
Oh my goodness. They need to just get over that. Yeah. Enough already. Am I remembering correctly too? Because I know you and I had kind of talked about this a while back too, but I'm trying to remember if this was Betty or if it was somebody else that I'm thinking of, that she was the one who had said that Zeta Reticuli was a binary star. And at that point, we didn't know that it was. And then that was part of the information that came later. Is that correct?
No, Betty did not say it was a binary star.
Okay.
She didn't know that. She knew nothing about astronomy. But that was Marjorie Fish, I believe, who knew it was a binary star. I could be wrong on that.
Interesting.
I know that that was something that was thrown out by skeptics. And this is why Stanton Friedman spoke to astronomers about the possibility that they might not be able to have planets in a stable orbit. But that was refuted by the astrophysicists who knew the distance data.
Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. And then there's also, and I do want to get to your book, but I find this super, super incredibly fascinating. And by the way, guys, if anybody can go see Kathy speak at a conference, please do. You will love it. But one of the things that I found so incredibly fascinating, and I just want to talk about it briefly, if we can, if you don't mind, in case anybody hasn't heard about it, is so you had Betty's dress. And can we talk about the pink stuff that grew on the dress?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, Betty took her dress off when she arrived home. It was a blue dress with kind of a purplish print, deep or indigo print on it. She loved that dress, but she just felt so dirty when she arrived home. She took the dress off, and when she did, she realized that it was torn. The zipper at that ran down the back, the stitching was torn out around the zipper at the top, and also the thick zipper fabric was torn. Her dress was torn from waist to hemline, and the hem was torn down on one side. And she knew she had to repair it. So what she did is she just put it in her closet and forgot about it. And the next time she took it out, there was a pink powder that had grown on the dress. So back in the early 70s, the University of Cincinnati chemistry department did an analysis on the dress. Leonard Stringfield, old-time deceased researcher, respected researcher, was the individual who collected that samples of that dress for the university. And they found that there were some strange things about it. And so then there was another chemical analysis after that. It was just a brief one, and didn't really tell us a lot. So when Phyllis Budinger contacted me, probably back in the year 2000 or 2001, I said to Betty, this MUFON chemist, and Phyllis was an analytical chemist, master's degree in chemistry. She worked for 35 years as an analytical chemist for Standard Oil, which later was BP Amoco. And so I talked Betty into giving Phyllis some samples of the dress. We, in fact, met Phyllis at the 2001 MUFON Symposium in Rochester, New York. And that's where the samples were collected.
Oh, wow.
And she did really a bang-up job at doing a chemical analysis, very thorough, on Betty's dress, and found some very strange things.
There we go.
So yeah, there are some photographs of the dress.
Yeah.
And she said there were anomalies found on that dress. And those anomalies are consistent with Betty's memory of what occurred to that dress. Now, she thinks that there was some kind of a fungus that grew on the dress and turned it to that pink color that you can see. Now, it didn't turn the entire dress pink. Around the waist, it didn't grow. But you can see on the photographs where around the arms, where those entities wrapped their long fingers around her arms as they were escorting Betty, it was pretty well saturated with that pink powdery substance.
Interesting.
And I have keep looking for scientists to analyze the dress. I recently found another scientist who, from the University of Pennsylvania, one of their divisions in Pittsburgh. I think it was University of Pennsylvania or Penn State, one or the other. But his chemistry students did some analysis, and they found very rare, expensive metals on Betty's dress with a very high melting point.
Wow.
Now that I wrote about that in detail in my update on Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience, and more updates on the pink powder on Betty's dress as well. There are some remarkable findings about her dress that suggest that, yes, indeed, we do have scientific evidence that this was a real occurrence, that Betty was abducted, and that this substance deposited on her dress and grew.
Wow. It's so amazing. Alien Girl 111 has asked, it has burn marks too, right? Does it have burn marks on it as well?
No, there were not burn marks on the dress, but the dress was pitted by that whatever grew on it or whatever they put on it.
Yeah.
Some scientists believe that the dress was exposed to some kind of decontaminant to protect the ETs from human germs, and that it killed the bacteria and viruses that might have been on the dress, and that then this maybe fungus or mold deposited, mildew, whatever, deposited from their hands and from the floor of the craft onto Betty's dress and then grew. Because without the bacteria to kill it, it could just grow everywhere.
That's
and
amazing.
then eventually die when it had finished eating what it could, I suppose.
That's incredible. And how amazing that we still have her dress. You know, so easily she could have just been like, oh, well, this is ruined. And,
well, she initially was going to throw it away. She hung it out on her clothesline and it blew the pink powder off. And she thought about just throwing it into the trash because her favorite dress was ruined. And then she thought, no, I should keep that. Maybe some scientists can find some evidence on this dress. And so she kept it until she found scientists who did have an interest in this.
That's incredible. So amazing. And the medals, I haven't heard that update. So that's interesting as well. Wow.
Yes, I don't often talk about it because it's in the new book, but
yeah. sorry.
But it tells about the medals specifically.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to read all about it. Okay, so speaking of the new book, let's talk about this new book of yours as well. So what finally got you to the point where you're like, you know what? I am just going to write about all of this and talk about it. And here we go, everybody.
I always had that urge to write about it, to write my memories, my emotional reaction to it, and how over years of study of my own experiences, my communication with these entities, and I was finally able to overcome my terror because I felt just trauma for many, many years. In fact, when I thought about it, I would start shaking or crying. I'd written my notes out, and it was so difficult. And if I went to UFO meetings, and I was always so tense at the meetings because it would remind me of what had happened to me. And finally, I went to a support group meeting that Denise Stoner was hosting in Orlando when I moved to Florida, and told my story confidentially for the first time in front of a group. And I have to tell you, I cried like a baby when I was telling my story. But afterward, I mean, it was embarrassing, but afterward, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And then I was determined that I was going to devise a plan to overcome my fear. And I was going to try to communicate with these entities. And so I wrote about that. I wrote about everything that I did using self-hypnosis. And it worked. Wow. And I was able to project love in their direction rather than fear when they came into my environment. And I had quite a lot of conscious recall. This isn't something I dreamed about or imagined or anything else. I had conscious recall of part of my experiences. And I had some evidence. I had witnesses in 3 of my abductions.
Wow.
And in one of those, people were knocking on my door wanting me to go out and see the UFO that was hovering near where I lived, very close near where I lived. I
Yeah.
wasn't home.
Wow. You were like, yeah, I see it very close up.
I think I
good.
was on the craft
Yeah.
when that happened.
Wow.
So, yes, I had those different things happen, and the memories of being on that craft, and one time being shown by this gray entity. I had the same one over and over, and he was not, I swear, he was not biorobotic.
Right.
This was a person who
Yeah.
was as real as me, I think. And I liked him. When I was on the craft, it was as when they were coming to get me, when they were in my environment, the terror set in. When I was on the craft, no, I wasn't. I was no longer terrified. And I had memories afterward, which were not terrifying memories. But so I learned quite a bit about being on the craft, of seeing these gestational tanks with fetuses inside, of just being shown different things, of being treated okay. But then when I was able to project love toward them, I received love back. And I had memories of this before in hypnosis. In fact, I was under hypnosis years ago, and I remembered them projecting the most profound love toward me that I had ever experienced. And it wasn't like love that you have here, where somebody is hugging you or telling you they love you. This was telepathic, and it was an extraordinarily intense projection of love. And I overcame my fear, in a sense, when I felt that love, that fear of being on the table when they were doing that. And then eventually they gave me some information about how long they'd been taking my family for, I think it was 5 or 6 generations.
Oh, wow.
It's all in the book. What their concerns are about our planet, how they worry about our use of nuclear weapons, about barbaric human behavior, how we treat one another, about how we fail to protect our environment, those kinds of things.
Yeah. That's amazing. Now, okay, so since you've had that interaction and you do also work with experiencers, I get a lot of the time, I always get this question, and I don't know if you have any more insight into it, because I'd love to have an answer for people, where they always ask about RH negative, the RH negative factor. Is that a thing? Is it not a thing? Is it coincidental that, a fair amount of abductees are RH negative? Do you know anything? Did they tell you anything?
It's not what they told me. I know this through a social research project that I worked on with Dr. Don C. Donderi, Dr. Michael Austin Melton, Denise Stoner, and Craig Lang. This was for the Mutual UFO Network's study of 516 experiencers of contact, and we had a scientific part of that, and we had a survey part of that. And so what we discovered is that although 15% of people in the general population have RH negative blood, it elevates to 31% among all of the experiencers in this study. But when you get to the group who were identified through the American Personality Inventory administered by Dr. Don C. Donderi, a psychology professor retired from McGill University, it's 33%. So yes, it is significantly elevated among experiencers, but still the majority of experiencers are RH positive.
Yeah, interesting.
My Aunt Betty Hill was O negative.
Was she?
Yes. But I'm
Interesting.
O positive.
Me too. Wow. So yeah, me too. So people always ask, I'm like, nope, I'm positive. It's always so fascinating to me. I don't know what it is. There's clearly something to it, but
Mm-hmm.
interesting. Now, so you said that they had been interacting with your family for 5 or 6 generations, and that's another like question we get, and it does seem as if there are these familial lines that they seem to be following for whatever reason. Did they explain to you anything as to why they were following your family for so long?
Well, that gets into another part of the book.
Mm.
In the other part of the book, I talk about my introduction to a government study that was done, starting out with Admiral Herbert Knowles, Rear Admiral from the Navy, and Wilbert Smith from the Canadian government. He was their UFO guy and a brilliant engineer. And so to move on beyond that, they did find scientific evidence that this communication was real.
Yeah.
And so that encouraged me to take part with some other researchers in a study of a man who is an experiencer, but who claimed contact with and communication with these a council of ETs. So we went into this as skeptics, looking for evidence. We found the evidence. And then to answer your question, I asked them why they take family lines. And they told me that this was because of the closeness of the DNA, so that they could see positive changes from generation to generation. So what they're attempting to accomplish is to make positive changes in family lines. And I imagine it's a lot of family lines, because I know there are thousands, if not millions, of people around this planet who have had contact and a part of this.
Absolutely. And that makes total sense, especially if you're looking at it from a scientific perspective. I mean, you're going to want to see that familial connection, the similarity in the DNA, and that makes complete sense. So in this book, the title is Alien Abduction, or it is Forbidden Knowledge, right? Oh my goodness, Forbidden Knowledge, Alien Abduction, from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. I can get it right. You think I could remember that? So when did you go from, was it when you started to talk about your experiences, or how did you go from that fear? And as you said, there was a point where you wanted to overcome it, but what was the spiritual transformation? What was that sort of flow from one to the other? Because that is something we see a lot of times with experiencers. I've seen it, I'm sure you have as well, where they start out kind of in that state of fear. And over the course of years, usually, you see their perceptions start to change, and their understandings of what's going on start to change. And I can only imagine, knowing you and knowing your work with experiencers and how kind of self-aware you are at the same time, that you must have sort of been able to document this entire process, which is absolutely fascinating.
Yes, I did. And there was a spiritual progression for me. And my statistics from the MUFON study I talked about indicates that 69% of the experiencers and 86% of the abductee group said that they became more spiritual. There are changes that take place in experiencers over time. We become more psychic, we become empaths, we become more spiritual, and pretty remarkable changes that we go through. And they're all for the positive, I think.
Yeah.
And so I was still fearful in 2012. When Denise Stoner and I were doing our first study on experiencers. We had only 75 participants. We had a control group and we had a group of experiencers. We were looking for commonalities. that experiencers share that aren't common in the general population.
Mm.
And one of the participants in that was a man from Australia, and
Mhm.
his name is Paul Hamden.
I know
And he
Paul.
communicates.
Paul and Cyan do a show on my channel every Wednesday. They're amazing.
Oh,
They're awesome.
and he communicates with extraterrestrials, he told me. And he said, would you like to speak with one named Keek? And so I said yes, and it was pretty bizarre at first to
But
go
how
and
could you
do
pass
this.
that opportunity up?
But I spoke with Keek via Skype several times.
Mm.
And then finally, I said to Keek, you know, I have a disease. I have an illness that is progressive, and I've been debilitated. I am attempting to work in this field to inform the public about what my research and what I'm doing. But after I speak at a conference, when I fly somewhere, I always come back ill, and I have to spend days in bed just to recover from the fatigue. And I mean, I would work during the daytime and I would go to bed after dinner because of that illness I had.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, I think that this is the result of an accident that I had with your people when I was taken. And will you please heal me? And I didn't expect to be healed. I didn't even know at that time that Paul was for real, and he is. I know it now. And so 4 nights later, I woke up in terrible pain in my body and strong tingling as well. And I woke my husband up and I said, you might have to rush me to the hospital or call an ambulance. I don't know if I'm dying or what, but I have this deep, deep pain inside me.
Wow.
And the next thing I remembered is being in another kind of environment. I don't know where I was. I know I was lying down. It was sort of a misty environment. I knew that there were at least 2 tall entities up near my head. And because I don't know how high the table was, but they seemed taller than what I was accustomed to. And they were glowing. And I was wondering what is going on. And they showed me, I don't know if it was a holographic image, a vision they put in my mind, or if I was looking at a screen. But they showed me my body, or it was a human body. I assumed it was me. And I could see like little bots going through the periphery of my body. And I could see some of my internal organs highlighted. And I said, can you stop the pain? Something like that. And they said that it was almost complete. So just tolerate it for a few more moments. And I would be healed. And so the next thing I knew, I was waking up. It was the following morning, and I felt like I was 23 years old again.
Wow.
I was completely cured from this illness for which there is no cure.
Wow.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and it really changed my attitude toward the ETs. I no longer thought I was being exploited, because here they had healed me, and I was so grateful to them. And that's when I decided I'm going to overcome this fear. And when they come in, I'm going to project love toward them.
Amazing. Anonymous Rex was asking, is this recall or from regression, this memory that you have of them healing you?
It was from recall.
Wow.
I had this memory. I also think I had a regression after that, but I couldn't. I was looking for it. I was talking with Paul, maybe a couple of months ago. We talked, maybe once or twice, once every week or two, actually.
Yeah, he's great.
Just by email. But anyway, I looked for a hypnosis session on that, and I couldn't find one. So I don't think I've been hypnotized about it yet.
Wow, that's
I
incredible.
did talk to a medical doctor about the organs
Yeah.
that were highlighted in different colors. There was one that was pink and one that was mint green. And he told me that those are the organs that are involved in the condition that I had.
Wow. That's amazing. It's incredible. So now these tall illuminated beings that you saw. So I know, having talked with Paul and Cyan, they do work with the Zetas. Were these Zetas, or they sound like they might have been different beings? Or do you know?
I really don't know, because I could only glance them in my peripheral vision, and I didn't turn my head around, to try to see them. So I saw what I could. So Paul thought that they were probably grays, maybe tall grays.
Yeah.
I don't know how high that table was. They just
Right.
seemed tall to me.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
But
Absolutely fascinating. And so
I'm
everything
so
has
grateful.
been wonderful since then. That's fantastic to hear.
Yes.
Incredible. Wow. That's incredible. As someone who has fibromyalgia, I feel your pain, or your past pain. So that's incredible. That's amazing.
Ask
Oh,
the ETs for healing.
yes. Yeah. I'm going to have to talk to Paul. Be like,
Yes.
"Kill nut on me, buddy." No.
I've told experiencers over and over again, ask your ETs for healing. And you don't have to wait until they come and take you to craft. You can just send telepathic messages to them.
Yeah.
If you meditate
Mhm.
and protect yourself so that nothing negative comes in, then you can try to communicate and send these telepathic messages, and they might come and heal you. I had one man I was working with in Canada who was an experiencer, and he had developed lymphoma
Oh, wow.
and was very upset about this. I said, I will send messages for you, and you send these messages as well. And a couple of weeks later, they came, and it was an orb, actually.
Wow.
He got video of it.
Oh my God.
And this beautiful pale blue orb came down his wall, flew like a butterfly across his bedroom, and dove into his body. And when he woke up the next morning, the lymph nodes in his neck that were really huge, I have a photograph of it, were tiny again. You couldn't even see them. By
Wow.
the time he did go in for his surgery,
Mhm.
he had 4 tiny necrotic nodes removed. So they were dead. No
So
cancer.
basically, they just killed off the lymph nodes that were the problem areas.
They killed them off, and he was cancer-free.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Wow. I mean, we hear, I mean, we hear about these stories, right? But it still is amazing to me every single time I hear about these stories of healing, which is so wonderful, because uh, there is sometimes a lot of fear associated with these experiences, but there are some really amazing and wonderful things that come from them as well. And I think we need to celebrate those too. So that's
Yes,
incredible. Wow.
absolutely.
Wow.
And, it depends upon the kind of entity that you're interacting with. If you're interacting with one of the negative types, you
Mm.
can go to my website, and I have a couple of articles on there on how to meditate and raise your vibrational frequency to get rid of them. Because if you send positive thoughts and love in their direction, that's not what they're looking for. They enjoy hurting people. They enjoy the fear. So don't give them what they're looking for. I've heard back from people who have tried this, and they haven't been visited.
Oh, wonderful. I am putting your website in the chat for anyone who wants to go check it out. And I will have it in the description down below. Actually, it's already in there. So you can go and buy Kathy's new book,
Yeah.
or any of the other ones too. I'm
And
assuming.
it's you can read those articles on, I think I have essays on contact, something like that. It's in one of the links at the top of the main page.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Um, Yes. Oh, yeah. Essays on contact. I can see that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing. Oh, good. Good, good, good. Well, everybody go check it out. Well, okay, so we are almost out of time already. I can't believe it. So, what do you want to leave with everyone? What is kind of a final word you want to say that has, something you learned from writing this book? Has it changed your perspective on anything? Anything you'd like to tell anyone?
Well, I want to say that the members of the Council of Eight are real.
Hmm.
We each received evidence that they're real. One came to me and communicated with me telepathically, gave me information, and we were able to measure their presence in the environment, even though they vibrate at a higher frequency. So we could see them as shadows, or we could see them just as being translucent or iridescent, but not them. We have to raise our own vibrational frequency to see them. There are 120 of our questions in my book, and their detailed answers. So the book gives a tremendous amount of information that we learned from this Council of Extraterrestrials about the good ones and about the bad ones and everything in between.
That's amazing. Well, everyone go get the book. I'm sure it is absolutely incredible. I can't wait to read it myself. And you have some conferences coming up that you're going to be speaking at as well, correct?
Yes, I will be doing 2 lectures and panel at the Roswell UFO Festival. And then I will be up in Denver the following weekend for MUFON's International Symposium. And I'm going to be doing a lecture there as well. And this year's focus is on the impact of the media on the public's perception about UFOs and contact. So my lecture will be on Betty and Barney. That's what they asked me to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to show the evidence, and it's going to show the media spin, so that you'll know fact from fiction at the end. And I'm showing the evidence, actual photographs, actual documents.
Amazing. Amazing. So yes, I know that will be an incredible one. And I love the idea of doing the media spin on it. That's fantastic. And you said
at Roswell,
yeah.
I'm going to be showing video captured in an abduction of 3 people. It's my biggest case currently. Video of the ETs coming in, dropping off a beam, and growing larger. So
what?
Yeah, I'm going to be.
You're holding out on me. What? That's crazy.
I'll also show it in Exeter, New Hampshire in September, and in Michigan in September.
That's incredible. Yeah, so I can't wait to see you in Exeter again. And I can't wait to see that video. That sounds absolutely insane.
Yes. I've done a frame by frame analysis.
Oh, that's going to be good. I cannot wait. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I always love chatting with you. You are just such a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kathy. Have a great night.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye. And thank you all so much for being here. Your comments are always appreciated. You guys are the best. So hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I will see you. Thursday. Jared and I will be actually coming to you live together, I think, because he's still here in town. We're still looking at things, going and checking out these ancient structures. It's been a lot of fun. So yes, I think we will be live on Thursday together, which will be very exciting. All right, guys. Well, I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Scattering leaves, the days go, dragging us along like ragdolls. Promise our real lives not far behind. Leave nothing to chance and we will not find. Still I'd like to be here for a while. Try to make it all matter. Pave the way for the shattering of youth. Promise our real lives not far behind. Leave nothing to chance and we will not find. Still I'd like to be here for a while. Still I'd like to be here for a while. Scattering leaves, the days go, dragging us along.